Okay, I think we are live here on Facebook. And good morning to those where it is morning, and good afternoon or even evening to others who may be watching us here. My name is Geoff O'Keeffe. I'm the Executive Director of Zen Peacemakers, and I'm delighted to welcome my friend Kineret Ando Yardena, who is both a writer poet as well as a longtime peacemaker and active participant in the Zen Peacemaker family and community, having done many events over the years. Um, and we only have a short time in this format. This format we're calling Peacemaker Chat, and it's meant to be just an offering for those who have a chance to dial in and we're not asking anything of you other than to hopefully be delighted. So we'll do our best. We'll do our best to delight. And I want to keep the sort of the announcement side of this as minimal as possible. But just to highlight, since you're here, we have a few things coming up that'll be really wonderful events. Thursday the 25th, our friend Jitsujo Gautier, an ordained monk at Zen Center of Los Angeles, will be leading a mala making project on Zoom. The week following, on the 30th of March, our friend Sean Tetsuro Murphy Sensei from Taos will be talking. He wrote One Bird, One Stone, and he'll be doing a talk that he's calling One Hand Laughing. And that should be wonderful. And then the following week, Ayo Yatende will be uh, our guest for her talking about Black and Buddhist, her book. So look for those events and please join us and sign up. And with that, I want to turn over to my friend uh, Ando and let you perhaps open with something that you'd like to share.
Thank you, Geoff, for inviting me here, and just really glad to be here with any other folks who are also joining us. I'm going to start by reading a poem called A Kind of Faith That Lives. A Kind of Faith That Lives. And for anyone, for those of you who are here with us, this poem is, among other things, a way to kind of catch this time about a year into since we went into lockdown around the pandemic, and a real transition to what we perceived and accepted as our normal lives, and how that has invited many of us into a kind of grief, a kind of loneliness maybe, and even new kinds of awakenings on the other side of this liminal time, this threshold time. A kind of faith that lives. There's a kind of faith that lives on the other side of despair. Don't think you can meet it until you're thrown down, 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 usually plummeted against all we call will. There is a kind of faith that lives on the other side of despair. Don't think you can meet it until you're thrown down, 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 usually plummeted against all we call will. For what one would go, promised nothing, apparent to lose everything. Everything, do you hear me? Everything that is beyond precious by choice. For what one would go, promise nothing, apparent to lose everything. Everything, do you hear me? Everything that is beyond precious by choice. And how can any one of us really know faith, really know anything, still holding on to some small version of ourselves we're sure is the only one we would want, we're sure is the largest, terrified to encounter the one of us who exists on the other side? I don't know. I'm still one of the ones holding on and terrified. At once praying for the plummet, at once praying the plummet won't happen to me. I don't know. I'm still one of the ones holding on and terrified. At once praying for the plummet, at once praying the plummet won't happen to me. There is a kind of faith that lives on the other side of despair. When you're splayed across the earth, no up and down sides anymore, earth and sky, one mother, one father. From here and only from here, let one who wants to speak to me of faith come. I'm not interested in a faith that hasn't lost everything first. There's a kind of faith that lives on the other side of despair. When you're splayed across the earth, no upsides and downsides anymore. Earth and sky, one mother, one father. From here and only from here, let one who wants to speak to me of faith come. I'm not interested in a faith that hasn't lost everything first.
My. Beautiful, Ando. That's beautiful. Um, I, and I'm going to ask this because I can't imagine anyone who's attending today won't have the same question. Are you publishing? And can people get access to this poem and others of yours?
Um, Good question. Um, it's an answer in progress. I am working with a wonderful poetry editor, Jenna Schwartz, right now, who is was recommended to me from another friend, a mutual friend, and she is journeying. She's been journeying with me through the process of actually self-publishing. So I I am in the journey of bringing this into the world in a more public way, maybe through a website. I don't have that yet, and I hope eventually through actually a book form, because I love paper books so much that I would love to make that offering of. And this is part of a collection. Actually, my first collection called "You Are the Answer to the Dreams of Your Ancestors." Which is a collection of about, I think it's about 29 poems and 4 essays. That is uh, maybe a couple months away from coming into the world in a book form.
Wonderful, wonderful. So as we do anyway, you and I will stay in touch, and when we have news for people, we'll certainly make a mention through our communications from Zen Peacemakers. We have published your poetry once at least, if not more times already, and we'll continue to do so. So let us know when that comes to fruition. We look forward to that. Do you have another you'd like to share?
Sure, I'd love to. So, a lot of, maybe as a preface, I'll say that a lot of the poetry that is sort of born is really coming out of this sense of the conversations that I'm in. And I think of this beloved poet to many of us, his contemporary poet David White, who really talks about, like, has this beautiful languaging around like the conversational nature of reality, that he's constantly involved in this ongoing conversation. And I think for me, I was actually walking among the trees and the birds this morning here in this cabin that we're staying at, and just aware of the way that these poems really come through this conversation, um, that that I think really lives at that outer question that I might not yet fully be lived into. And so this is a poem you've actually published before with the Zen Peacemakers, and it's called "The Call." And this poem really came out of a moment where I had, vocation is a really important part of my life, and I hear it in a lot of people around me. This longing to really serve the world in a way that bridges our medicine, our gifts, with some part of this longing or need in the world that we see. And this poem came on this brink of discernment of whether to stay with something that um, I thought I'd been pouring everything into, and then it kind of emerged that there was a clearing on the other end, to maybe even step away.
Uh,
So it's called The Call. The call. Is it possible that not every call is a call to completion? Is it possible that not every call is a call to completion? Is it possible to finish something walking away? A prism of light streaming behind you with grief for all you've left behind. Is it possible to finish something walking away? A prism of light streaming behind you with grief for all you've left behind. Sometimes you are called to the mountain for the meeting that needed to happen along the way. Sometimes you are called to the mountain for the meeting that needed to happen along the way. The call is leading you. Pay attention. Follow it home all the way through until even the call itself has been left behind. The call is leading you. Pay attention and follow it home all the way through until even the call itself has been left behind.
oh, I love that. I love that. Uh, your use of repetition in your first poem was very evident and very pronounced, and it's here again in this one too, and I just love it. You know, appropriately on St. Patrick's Day, being Irish, you know that's so strong in Irish music for sure. You can hear Van Morrison repeating and repeating and repeating and
Mm.
repeating, and but your repetition is just so well used. It's evocative, and it goes in. I feel it going in. I love that. We had talked about me slipping one in here, and now I would actually I'm inclined to slink away, but I will. I had a couple little short ones here, but I shared one with you that I think you liked, that I'll read, I'm going to ask you about writing, and then we'll go back and
Please do.
let you read another one or two. Uh, and this is called From One to None. This is one I sent to you the other day, and I don't know where mine come from, and I'm not very disciplined with it. They just pop up, and this isn't really a poem. This is just verse. For years I have counted. I thrived because I pretended to believe the proper order of things was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I succeeded because I feigned an affinity for 15, because it was more than 10. I earned praise because I could combine 7 with 22 and conjure the illusion that something new had been created called 29, and that 29 was very real. I created lists in order of importance or value. Things to do, things to get, places to go, people. I planned to do things because they were at the top of the list. And naturally, wouldn't it be right to do number 1 before number 2? If I do not get around to number 10, at least I had a strategy. I saw history as a sequence, and if I disrupted that order, the meaning was lost and the wrong people would be to blame. In quotes, but they attacked them first. Colonialism spawned the revolution. Lax lending policy burst the bubble. 1949 Israel must have preceded September 11. At times I assigned a number to people, and for that I'm wrong. I am not one man. She is not number 1. They did not fail to make the cut because they were numbers 31, 32, and 33. 10 best lists leave the 10,000 vocalists left off the list singing to each other. I assess my future security by counting. This is clearly not enough. That would make me feel much more comfortable. When can we relax? Leonard Cohen said that he would resume smoking when he reached 80. I likely have missed the quality of one or five standing alone. What does five feel like? What are five's qualities independent of four and six? Does one truly precede the other, or precede and the other follow? Ancient wisdom traditions and modern physicists would not agree. All at once seems to be the prevailing agreement. Counting enables competing and keeping score. Who is the leader? Who has the most? Who is best? To understand and appreciate the light in our kids' eyes or the death of our parents, counting is impotent. Pi does not ease the crawling gnaw of fear in my guts. No algorithm adds a single thing to the dawn or makes it more efficient or more hopeful. When I choose or judge or rank, I leave the rest alone and unloved. Those who count and are counted the least often have the most. We can cover the basics we need to survive without counting. I sat in a city park near Portland State a very long time ago. I had nothing, and I was nowhere, without a plan or a strategy. My sack was filled with ideas and no medium to accept them. I did not know what number I was, where I ranked, or how far back I was in the queue, and I was most alive then. I'm coming home soon. An old man sits alone. 3 hawks circle overhead. A car horn honks twice. The sun slips behind the flat irons and then is gone. A twilight breeze floats down from the peaks. Thank you. So I'd love to ask you, and I want this to be about you, but I'll preface it with me. I'm totally undisciplined. As Neil Young is to rock and roll, and he's referred to as a primitive garage player. That's the kind of writer I am. I do it when I feel like it. I have no discipline whatsoever. Even Hemingway had some discipline. Notwithstanding perhaps that it involved beginning to drink in the middle afternoon until the evening, but nonetheless, I do it when it comes. And it may not come for weeks or months. I'm curious what your approach is. Do you approach it like like a practice or like a craft or a discipline? What's your approach to this?
I first want to thank you for reading that beautiful piece.
Oh,
I think there's something in, I'm going to use the word sprawling, because it reminds me of this kind of piece that I worked on yesterday that I shared with you last night. That sometimes there's this way that we sprawl, or that I sprawl, and that I notice another sprawls like over space with language, and it creates like a multiplicity of meaning in the multiplicity of images that are offered and braided together. And I felt like that piece that you just offered, it had this weaving of numbers and the counting and the linearity of time with this kind of manyness of images that are evoked in that same question of what is this meaning. Um, and I think probably that multiplicity is probably as much of a way to describe my writing practice as anything, and any other practice actually. I think I think my I think if there's like an aspirational daily practice, it's to pay attention. It's to pay attention to um, uh, there's a beautiful little fire in here, it's to pay attention to does it need fiddling with, and an extra log put on and some, blowing it up, or does it need, is it the kind of paying attention to just appreciate that there's warmth already emanating through and it doesn't need a fixing. Um, and that I think one of the hardest practices for me, and I don't know if this is for you as well, I think one of the hardest practices sometimes is a paying attention that's a very gestative, fertile filling up, and nothing is coming out.
Mm.
And I see that a couple friends of mine are here, and one of you is a singer, or a vocalist, somebody who uses your voice as part of your medicine, and another one of you uses so many things actually as your medicine, your activism, your voice, your manyness, and I I think of the way that the quality of paying attention, and sometimes it takes a while for the thing to come out, and sometimes with some of the poetry last year, um, I was working as a chaplain resident last year at Parkland Hospital in Dallas, and around this time last year, when COVID-19 and the coronavirus became more prominent and we went into lockdown, our hospital practices changed. The role of being a chaplain changed, and about April 7th of last year, I got sick. I got the virus, and so a lot of the poetry that is in this, actually in this collection, this first collection, came out of a very short duration of time of deep intensity of grief. And there was also a lot going on in my personal life where I had front row seats to deeply uh, a deeply tragic unfolding of relationships, and where I watched someone really uh, being having to find again, like, this sense of what lies on the other side of despair,
Mm.
um, when we can't intervene even in our own life and our relationships that are closest to us.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes it's allowing the seasonality that comes out of the daily practice of paying attention. And then there's the seasonality of what emerges on the other end. So that's a bit of a meandering response, which
Oh, that's wonderful. I love that. I love
um,
that. Do you have another you'd like to share with us? We have another 5 minutes or so, and we might even be able to cheat on our time too.
okay. I didn't know that I would read this one, but I was exploring the possibility of it last night, and it feels like, having just shared my own getting sick last year, and this is um, this is a poem that I wrote the day or second day after I came out of the hospital. I was ended up being getting sick on a Friday with COVID, and had this kind of little seeming healing, and then plummeted again, and ended up really struggling to breathe, and went to the emergency room. And I remember these friends of mine um, driving me, and uh, my beloved, actually, he wasn't able to be present, to be there physically at the time, which I know was a real struggle for him. And two friends drove me, and I have been working at this hospital, and they drove me to my same hospital that I work at. And I came in, and I forgot that we have this policy that nobody's allowed to be with you, because we were already at that time in not wanting to protect as many family members as possible from contracting a virus that many of us we didn't understand. Most of us we didn't understand. And I remember landing and this friend of mine, Mike, walking me in, and Molly having driven me, and Mike walking in and them saying, sorry, you're going to have to leave. And me just having this like really just deep grief inside me that I was going to have to, like, I felt so sick and could barely breathe and was hunched over, and that I wouldn't have an advocate there for me, or accompaniment, in that physical way. And I remember sitting in this wheelchair, and in the hallway, and being feeling so alone, and so kind of, and really scared actually. Um, and I reached out to this to our circle, to a circle of ours and peacemaker Native American friends, bearing witness friends from our work up in the Lakota lands of the South Dakota. And I remember reaching out and just saying, like, I'm here and I'm scared, and just immediately being met by this huge circle and ceremony. And this poem flowed out a day or two later, once I came home. And this is called "This is a Prayer to Help Me Ask for Prayer." This is a prayer to help me ask for prayer. This is a prayer to help me ask for prayer, to acknowledge that sometimes it feels like a good thing to not need to be the strong one, especially for myself anymore. This is a prayer to help me ask for prayer, to acknowledge that sometimes it feels like a good thing to not need to be the strong one, especially for myself anymore. To say I don't want the days of the story of my life to close out, and to find out that that was the only dream of me I let be seen and told in a public way. To say that I don't want the days of the story of my life to close out, and to find out that that was the only dream of me I let be seen and told in a public way. This is a prayer to help me ask for prayer, to know that the asking is part of the prayer, as is the not asking, and the not wanting to, and the wanting to. And to know that absolutely nothing is not part of the prayer, especially the parts I'm afraid are, especially the parts I would wish would not be. This is a prayer to help me ask for prayer, especially when I don't know what to ask for or how to ask for it, or when I do and feel scared to be heard for what I want most of all, especially for when I'm not sure that I deserve it or am certain I don't, especially when I don't want to be seen, known, or thought of as someone needing this kind or any kind of prayer. This is a prayer to help me ask for prayer, to invite me back into the great conversation between the living in me and the living in everything else, between the hope in me and the hope, and the way hope is joined with every hope throughout creation. Because probably revelation is hiding as often, because probably revelation is hiding as often in the corridor moments, when hunched over in a wheelchair, wanting to disappear and hide. This time I don't, but instead finally say, I can't breathe. Please send prayers. And there you all are, like you have been waiting your whole lives for this very moment of my turning and asking to love me and to bless me, saying, we are breathing with you. I say, I am terrified. You say, we are holding you. I whisper, I am so scared. You say, we are praying and making offerings. We have made a circle around you. I say, I feel so alone. You say, go ahead, sleep for a while. We are here with you all night. I say, I feel so alone. You say, go ahead, sleep for a while. We are here with you all night.
Oh, thank you. This is beautiful. And this is a good one for us to end with. You have another one that you've shared that we also published at Zen Peacemakers, that talks about the tendency to go towards suffering, which is compassion, isn't that? And the part that it's easy to leave out, and I don't mean to sound like I'm teaching here because I'm not, but it's just occurring to me the part that it's easy to leave out in that going towards suffering is our own, and you just included that in a most beautiful way. And given all of the people, I mean, I think we're feeling hopeful that perhaps we're seeing a little bit of the end of this pandemic, but it's still out there, and it's out there for a much longer time. And so many people still suffering and alone and fearful. I really hope this poem can be set free and shared with all those people who would benefit so much from that. I feel it healing already. So, and we are, wow, I wish we could do this another hour. We are at the end of our time. We promised to keep these brief. So, Ando, this is lovely. The whole landscape of my day just changed completely. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much for that, and thank you everyone who had a chance to sit in and listen to our friend Kineret Ando Yardena